Good morning, America. How are you? Today is Sunday, November 15th, 2020, and I'm Carlos Saldivia. And our show is Pushback, and it is brought to you by Normal America and Penn Patriots Radio. So this morning, I want to start with the following question. How do I persuade the average American that there are worse things than mean tweets? How do I do that? Socialism is one of them, one of the worst things. Um, Without an unbiased press, the republic would be lost. It would be lost because communism diligently subverts it for the power, and like the institutions that the Democratic Party controls, education and entertainment and big tech, those things would destroy us from within. In socialism, everything is political. Yeah. Where you shop, where you work, if you work, who you hang out with, what clubs you belong to, most major crimes. And what I mean by that is that even murder is politicized. Whereas before, if you committed a murder, let's just say that you killed your neighbor because he was sleeping with your wife. Now, murders will be looked through the lens of killing your political opponent just because they're your political opponent. That's socialism. Theft, especially to survive, is codified, which is why it was, allowed under most major cities in this country that were democratically controlled, and there was rioting and looting. It was allowed. You owe us for the original sin of slavery and white supremacy. This is where we are right now. And losing this election marks a tipping point in our history. There's no way back, at least not in our lifetime, especially if the United States is claimed as a prize. The prize is turning America socialist. That's the prize. It is the greatest prize. I have some ideas on how we can respond, but before that, I would like to say good morning and introduce to you my friends, Todd Bartlett and Rob Knorr. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning.
Rob?
Morning. Great to be here.
So, Rob, why don't you start and give me your early morning thoughts before we roll into our show today?
Yeah, so yesterday we saw again what happens when it was the MAGA March. I don't know exactly how many people were there. Easily over 100,000 that went to D.C. and had rallies elsewhere. Did you see any buildings burned down? Nope. Were they fighting with police? Nope. But what happened in D.C., a bunch of people with ski masks and shields and weapons all dressed in black came. They decided to throw fireworks and things like that at Trump supporters eating. They decided to blindside and sucker punch old men and other people. And then inevitably what happened, what the media always wants to happen is Trump supporters started to fight back. Now it's the evil Trump supporters. Oh, they were there to engage in violence. And I know people on the left that showed up and they said, I saw Trump supporters behaving violently. Yeah, after a day of them being attacked maliciously. But let me ask you this, to anyone that says that. Can you show me one Obama rally, one Hillary rally, one Joe Biden rally where hundreds of Trump supporters showed up and started beating innocent people there? Can we see one? Can we see one Trump rally where they started to light the city on fire? Can we see one where they were fighting in large numbers with the police? Can we see one of those? What always happens is it's the same in all these situations. I talk about this a lot, Carlos. Our greatest strength is our greatest weakness, and that we're willing to be someone who looks and will be critical of when people on our sides do things. Are there Trump supporters that will behave badly? No doubt. Absolutely. Are there Trump supporters that show up wanting a fight because they think the other side will show up to fight? Of course. Is that the best thing? No. But we will self-reflect on our side and what goes wrong. We see over and over again from those on the left, and straight to the top with Joe Biden, Antifa's just an idea. Remember? He didn't condemn it. It's just an idea. Just an idea, he said. We see the double standards, the threats they employ, the violence, the intimidation. This is the future of America. They're trying to goad Trump supporters and Republicans into responding back with violence. Where's Bill Barr? Where are the federal officers? Where are the city police? That they just allow this to occur over and over and over and over and over again. And the media is totally fine with it. All they'll cover is if Trump supporters respond. That's the only time they'll cover it. And so once more we see, you can't be, and look, this isn't unusual. I just debated some people on the left the other day. The right is our enemy. We must totally eliminate them. I don't think they meant kill us, but they meant eliminate the Republican Party. They think we're fascist. They think we're Nazis. They think we're racist. That's what the leadership in their party has told them for 4 years. And so they feel like they're morally justified to go out and use violence. So if you're one of my friends on the left out there and you say, I saw Trump behaving badly, ask yourself this. Why were you gathered with a bunch of people that showed up with weapons and shields? What do you think their intent was? To just go peacefully say, hey, we don't like Donald Trump? Do you think that was their intent? What do you think? What did you say to those you saw on your side as they beat Trump supporters that were trying to walk away from the rally? Did you say anything? Or did you only get upset when violence was enacted upon you because you and your side engaged in violence? Yes, it's terrible. I don't want to see this violence. I don't want to see vigilantism. But until you're willing to condemn and acknowledge that your side has started this over and over again, nothing will ever get changed. And of course, they're okay with it because the establishment's on their side. And so they say, oh, well, it's perfectly fine. We're just anti-fascist. We're anti-fascist. We're anti-racist. So it's okay for us to use this violence. So once more, another sad day for America to show where we are. And it fits in with your opening there. This is what they want. They want total state control. They want socialism. They want the state to be able to pick which side's allowed to be violent and condemn those that have political beliefs that don't align with them. This is exactly what they want. And we will see more of it over and over and over again until there are consequences for those engaged in this violence.
Todd, your thoughts on this beautiful Sunday morning?
Well, just to Rob's point, seeing all the photos from yesterday and how they're being underreported by the national media, where it's, thousands of people instead of hundreds of thousands of people in a peaceful protest. I mean, they didn't even cover the fact that they marched to the Supreme Court, and sang together and marched together. And other than a couple of idiots that were there to sow violence, it was absolutely peaceful. And here's what's even funnier about the violence that occurred. The punches that were thrown and the idiocy that went on, you actually saw people in the crowd, grab these people by the scruff of the neck and hand them to the police and tell the police to get them the hell out of here. Because they're not part of what's going on. They were there to sow violence. And it's just...
Yeah, and think of that the opposite, right? Every time you see a Black Lives Matter or Antifa rally that engages in property destruction and violence, what do you see? Turn that camera off. Get the umbrellas out. Don't leave people film them. Protect them from the police. That's the difference. I go back. Remember the Virginia rally? Seems like decades ago. The gun rally in Virginia? They left the place cleaner than when they entered. That's what conservatives advocating for the Second Amendment did. There were groups. Remember, I remember watching live video of this. There were, black groups that showed up. Kind of Black Lives Matter type groups that said, we're here for the Second Amendment. Was there any violence against them? Everyone said, great, exercise your rights. Absolutely. Even if we disagree politically, you're entitled to the Second Amendment. That's why we're here to defend it. There was no violence. There was no fighting with police officers. And that was armed people. Thousands of armed people. Not one instance of violence that I saw recorded. Yet every time we see one of these rallies on the left, you see the violence. Well, not every time. That's not fair. But many times we see these rallies on the left, you see violence. And then it's not just the violent people. It's those around, how they react. Why are they shielding them from the police? Why are they shielding them from video? Why are they always screaming, turn that camera off? Yet when you see someone is a Trump supporter behave in behavior like this, the vast bulk of people around there say, no, stop that person. Hand them off to the police. It's unreal.
So a couple of thoughts as I hear your statements this morning. The first one is, do you realize that you could be a 40-year-old man and not understand that Stephanopoulos on Channel 7 News used to work for Clinton? So if you're watching your news, if you're an average American, and I want to make sure that I underscore my point when I emphasize being an average American. The object of this show is to be able to help the average American understand what's going on politically today, so they can stand on their own 2 feet and defend the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. That's the object of this show. It's called Pushback because we're pushing back against the narratives of the major media that say that there's nothing happening, that there's nothing to see here, that there's only hundreds of people there. So if you work a 10-hour day, and let's say you're a trucker, or you are a electrician, or you are a surgeon, and you work long hours. Okay, your 1% of knowledge is in the thing that you do to make money. Being an electrician, being a surgeon, being a truck driver, not understanding exactly what's going on with the constant stream of narrative that's happening in our political world right now. So when you sit down and you watch, when you get home and you're tired, you have a beer and you have dinner and you sit down and, you kiss your wife and you kiss your children and you gather at the dinner table and you put the TV on, which many Americans have a TV in the kitchen, and watch TV and, catch up on the news. And George Stephanopoulos is telling you in those 10 minutes before you shut it off in disgust that because of mean tweets by the president, our country is going to hell. So that's what you believe. So based on that, the fact that a 40-year-old man doesn't understand that Stephanopoulos is in the tank for the Clintons and the Democratic establishment, but gets to tell you and talk to you every single night. Based on that, I have to ask a couple of questions. So here's the first question that I have for you guys, and specifically with respect to what happened yesterday. What's more important? Protesting or defending yourself? What's more important? So I can make the case that turning the other cheek with these people doesn't work. That's why you have Proud Boys, okay? Because they're sick and tired of turning the other cheek. And they're going to hit the streets and defend themselves and protect other people. So my question to you is there's a friend of the show. And a friend of the show, I say because, he came on at 3:00 in the morning and he spent almost 2 hours with us. A friend of the show yesterday, because he lives in the area, went down to the protest to see what's going on. What are the odds that our friend of our show not only found the Proud Boys, but got attacked by them? What are the mathematical odds in all those people that he found these people? Because he wasn't just going down to check and see what was going on. Was he? See, because we're not stupid. Are we? So this is a strategized tactical operation to take over our country. They communicate. They know where each other are. Okay? And this is the person that comes on our show and sounds, like he's well educated. He's the 1% with respect to politics. Certainly foreign policy. Okay? And these are the things that I don't understand. Because if you're going to try to sell unity to me, if you're going to come and sell unity to me after what happened in the last 4 years, even that guy and that woman that comes in for dinner at night understands that the last 4 years haven't been good years. Okay, with respect to the rhetoric that's been happening. So if you're going to try to pitch unity to me, the way that you pitch unity to me is if you as the guy that's the leader of the Democratic Party, I'm the guy. Remember what he said? You say that what happened yesterday was awful, right? You renounce that, right, guys? This is yes, right? You renounce that. Nobody renounced it. No one in leadership renounced it. If you want to bring us together, there's nothing better to bring us together than to say that the irregularities from this election should be something, and let me paraphrase my friend Rob Noor, that there is no place for corruption in our system. And you should stand to make sure that these irregularities are proven false or proven true, but there cannot be corruption. This is what normal, regular, sane Democrats should be saying, but aren't, correct?
Yeah, and just talking about the person that was on the show that went, look, I'm not saying that people went there. I'm not saying that person specifically went there to engage in violence, but he went there with people that were armed, that had shields, or he met up with those people, right? And this is not just that person. This happens over and over. I hear this from my friends all the time in the life.
But what are the odds that you found the Proud Boys and that they happened to stab someone that was with you? What are the odds?
I mean, and here's what happens. They showed up. They were clearly ready for armed combat. This is, again, I've told this example a million times. Did you ever go to the bar and you see like someone, a smaller person or something, and they just keep starting on someone bigger? They keep slapping them. They keep spitting in their face. They keep throwing a drink on them. And then finally that bigger person has enough and they whack them. And then that smaller person all of a sudden goes, he hit me. Look what he did. I'm a victim. That's what these Antifa people do. And they could call themselves what they want. I don't care. Well, Antifa's just an idea. The people that showed up there with shields didn't show up because they thought they were going to engage in peaceful protest. They showed up because they knew that they were going to be in armed combat. That's what they did. They came to a place where they knew there was going to be a rally in support of a political person that they don't like, and they came ready to fight. And if you're with those people, and then you're shocked that when the melee breaks out that you were involved, you're being disingenuous.
Right.
And if your claim is, well, I'm allowed to be here, free speech. Okay, the same's true in Portland, right? Every time Patriot Prayer tries to have a meeting, and Antifa comes and attacks them and assaults them with weapons. All you have to do is go look after the RNC. You remember that footage? You remember Rand Paul being assaulted? Mm-hmm. You remember all of the people surrounding all of the people that were leaving Trump's rally? You remember that? Yep. Can you show me one instance of that happening to Barack Obama? Can you show me one instance of it happening to a Hillary crowd? Can you show me one instance of it happening to a Biden crowd? It's always the same. You think you have the right to show up, harass, beat, spit on, scream at anybody that you disagree with politically, and when they finally fight back because the police and the federal investigators refuse to do anything, then you throw a fit. Oh, I'm the victim. Oh my goodness, look what they did. This is horrible. I'll look at your evidence. I'll say, yes, if you show me evidence of a Trump supporter behaving badly, I will call that out. But what did you expect to happen? This is the problem with Black Lives Matter and Antifa that I've been talking about for 5 years that no one wanted to listen to. Yes.
So what is the pushback?
Real quick, the problem is this. It's not that they're violent terrorist mobs, which they are. That's bad enough. It's that they have the institutional blessing. The police
Media-
constantly let them
media,
out. The
right.
DAs dropped the charges. The police refused to intervene. The feds refused to call them a terrorist group, refused to do anything. They deflect. They say, no, it's Trump supporters. No, it's all white supremacists. Don't believe your lying eyes when you saw these people burning down cities across America for the 6 months. It's not them, it's the KKK. That's what they said. That's the real danger. Because what they want, what they've been setting up for 4 years is, we're going to finally make Trump supporters snap, like Kyle Rittenhouse, who was defending himself as people were shooting, as people were chasing him down that were committing arsons, attempting to harm him. And when he defended himself, they say, see, you go to jail. Like the McCloskeys, who had their property broken into by violent people that were threatening to kill them. And when they just armed themselves, they were the ones who faced charges, not the people that broke in their property and threatened to kill them. This is your future, America. And by the way, if you're on the left and you think it's funny, it will come for you. Someday
no
you'll run
question.
afoul of the mob and it will come for you, and you get exactly what you deserve on that day. So I don't want to hear your sob story about, but the Proud Boys fought back. That's not fair. The Proud Boys fought back. I'm not supporting them showing up to engage in conflict. I think that's stupid. But what did you expect to happen when you issued violence over and over and over and over and over again? Someone was going to push back. And this is always the case with, it's the same with cancel culture. Oh, you should get fired for who you support. As soon as one of them get fired, this isn't right. Look what's happening. Oh my God. They never have consequences enacted upon them, and soon those consequences will come. I'm trying to keep it out of the hands of vigilantism, but that's what's coming. That's what they want. And trust me right now, if you're a Trump supporter out there and you say, well, I've had enough, I'm going to engage in violence. The same police that you have defended for 4 years, that you've defended through this whole Black Lives Matter defund the police, the same police officers you defunded will, with a smile on their face, put their boot in your neck and throw you in prison. Because the institution is controlled by these domestic terrorists or people that support them.
And they're here already. Here, right, Todd? In Williamsport, Pennsylvania, they're here already. Our mayor marched with Black Lives Matter.
Yeah,
he
there was
marched with them. Our mayor's campaign manager marched with Black Lives Matter. That same campaign manager put out a tweet. Do you remember the tweet that she put out this week? It basically said that we should gather and support Democratic-owned restaurants.
progressive.
Progressive restaurants. These are the same people. They're here. They're already in place here in Williamsport. They weaponized the police against me when they came to my house because of a Facebook post. They're here. They're here, ready to do the bidding of these national people. And listen, I know that you don't believe that the Proud Boys should be doing what they're doing. So I ask again, what's more important, protesting or defending yourself?
I mean, look.
Defending yourself. That's the answer.
Right. I mean,
Protect
but I mean,
yourself at all
this.
times.
But
It's
again,
one of
this.
the things that this show talks about all the time.
But
protect yourself at all times, especially after the bell.
But look, here's the problem. Both of these things are mutual, right? The Second Amendment and the First Amendment are integrally intertwined. Like protesting is a portion of the First Amendment. And if you don't have the right to defend yourself, you won't have the right to free speech. If you don't have the right to free speech, you will lose your right to defend yourself. Both are equally important. Look, I don't mind. You could show up and protest. Again, like when the left says the majority of Black Lives Matter protests were peaceful, they're right. You know how I know that? I live in Clarion County. In Clarion, there was a Black Lives Matter protest. No violence, no police harmed, no buildings burnt down. I'm sure small towns across America had Black Lives Matter protests like that. Do I agree with Black Lives Matter? No, I don't. But I fully support the right to peacefully protest. Fully. Right? The difference is, imagine at that Black Lives Matter protest in Clarion, what if me and 30 of my friends would have showed up with shields and ball bats, right? And started spitting on people and sucker punching them as they tried to leave.
Right.
And then someone from that movement decides to punch me in the face because I've been attacking them. Would everyone on the left be like, look at that violence from Black Lives Matter? My God, look at them. They punched Rob. Of course not. They'd say, what did Rob expect? He showed up antagonizing, starting violence. Of course, if the police allow that to occur, inevitably, there's going to be violence reciprocated from the other side. Now, you never see all the rallies that we saw, all the rallies for Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. You can count the number of times on your hand that you saw right-wing people show up and start violence with them. Yet almost every single Trump rally, this is what occurs. People, radicals from the left come, they intimidate, they harass, they spit, they scream. Every single time. I remember you remember after Charlottesville in Boston, it was called a free speech rally, right? And the key speaker was an Indian American gentleman who was running for office against one of the bigger Democrats. But it was just to advocate free speech. I watched as about maybe 1,000 people showed up for this free speech rally, and about 30,000 showed up to stop it, which they effectively did. And I watched the live stream all day as they spit on conservatives, as they attacked them, they punched them, all of this stuff. You know what I watched the chief of police of Boston say at the end of the night? It was all peaceful. I watched them riot against the cops. You know what the chief of police said? It was all peaceful. That's what we're fighting against. They control culture. Therefore, they control the institutions because politics is downstream of culture. And right now, you're not allowed to defend yourself. These police are afraid to stand up and say, no, we're not going to accept these political terrorists. We're not going to accept this violence. So if you gather in support of your First Amendment to cheer on your president, there's a solid chance you will be physically attacked. You know that. And you have to accept. And when that happens, the chance of the police intervening are next to none. Now, if you fight back, the chance of the police intervening are about 80 to 90%. That's where we're at in this country. And it's going to get worse. And this is what they want.
Oh, no question about it.
This is what they want.
It's already over. It's already over. It's not going to get worse. It's already over. Like I said, if this election, they will defang the police. Not defund, but defang. Okay, and the new police will be Antifa. Oh, yeah, it's what's going to happen. My question to Todd Bartlett is, why was the election so close, given all these things that normal people already know? Why was it so close?
It wasn't.
So make a case.
So I'm with Sidney Powell on the releasing the Kraken because I don't have a whole lot of faith in the current election systems we have, especially electronically. We did all this work to make sure that the election was secure and, not a situation where it was foreign interference interfering, and yet we have contractors that are selling election machines that have parts from China. How's that not election interference from a foreign entity? We have the national media conducting polls in a certain state that say that Vice President Biden's up 17 points, and yet Wisconsin's headed to a hand recount. And in Milwaukee County alone, they're showing that there are hundreds of thousands of ballots that are in question. So I'm with Sidney Powell and releasing the Kraken. They watched this happen in real time in the Eisenhower building in the SCIF. Where votes were changing 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning by the hundreds of thousands when the red tsunami was coming across the machines. They had to stop it. Now, to your point, Carlos, and to your point, Rob, Vice President Biden was the same guy who sat in the room and was asked, what do we want to do with bin Laden? What are we going to do with this particular terrorist? Well, let's not do that. Let's not do that. So he was protesting instead of defending. Well, there's a story that broke last night that, according to the Associated Press, the U.S. and Israel worked together to track and kill a senior al-Qaeda operative in Iran earlier this year. It's al-Qaeda's number 2, Abu Muhammad al-Masri. Al-Qaeda's number 2, killed by assassins in the Iranian capital in August on the anniversary of the 98 bombings of the U.S. embassies in Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya, and in Tanzania. I would argue the President Trump is defending this country as opposed to protesting against it when you're taking out Al-Qaeda's number 2. Oh, did we mention he took out another Al-Qaeda guy and other terrorists? He's not clowning around.
And listen, right? Like, I totally agree. But look at it this way. We're not just talking. It's not just that they refuse to condemn Biden and Harris. Let's be honest. Biden's not going to be the president for long if he wins. Harris actively tried to bail out people arrested for violence in Milwaukee. Biden staffers did the same. That's what they did. Imagine if Trump, at Charlottesville, imagine if Trump would have pushed for bail for the white supremacists that had been arrested there. Imagine the outrage. But that's what Biden and Harris did, no problem.
Funded the bail monies and the pool of money that was there for them to be bailed out.
And let's
funded, not supported, not allowed, not funded. That's what what Harris and Biden supported.
Their particular
financially.
Their particular side of the ticket says that folks in jail should be allowed to vote, or the felons should be allowed to vote, and yet they don't tell people in quarantine how they should be allowed to vote.
That's exactly right. And look at as I predicted before the election, it wasn't just we'll see what the evidence of fraud is at the ballot box. I've talked about it in my show for 2 weeks now. We'll see what comes of it, right? But it's not just that. I predicted that they would rig the system in every way possible, and they did. They were not going to leave it to chance, right? That's not why the media. That's why the New York Post, the oldest newspaper in the country, was censored by all of tech, all of the big social media platforms. That's why the media refused to cover any stories critical of Joe Biden. That's why they refused. They were totally in the tank for him. That's why the intel agents were totally going after Trump. That's why they're not willing to call Antifa a terror group. Why they say the real problem is white supremacy. All of these things, they had total control of all of these institutions. That's what occurred. And that's what we're witnessing in our country. Look, you can't even get, the propaganda is amazing. I'm watching people on the left that think in their bones that they're anti-establishment march alongside Nike, Amazon, the Lincoln Project, Bill Kristol, the neocons like Cheney, Max Boot, march along these neoliberalists that want these forever wars. I'm watching them say, we're anti-establishment. We're in it with Nike and Amazon and the neocons. We're anti-establishment. We just had a story break this week that I watched the mainstream media celebrate, which were that Trump's generals intentionally lied to him about how many troops we had in Syria because they didn't want Trump to pull troops home from Syria. Now, I'm old enough to remember when I entered college and the biggest issue on the left was bring the troops home. These wars are unjust. Now I'm watching the left celebrate when the president finally tries to bring the troops home. Nope, the generals that really run the show just lied to the president. They just flat out lied so that he couldn't bring the troops home. And I'm watching the left celebrate, say, we're the party of peace. We're the party. If you don't want those troops there, you're a racist
xenophobe.
And I just had a friend text me he's not even a big Trump supporter or conservative. He would call himself an independent. He's like, I can't deal with politics anymore ever again. Go to Google, search Antifa. All you see is media outlets and others defending them. Go search Kyle Rittenhouse. All you see is he's a murderous thug. The same with the McCloskeys. Let's be honest, big money has won. It has. Now, we'll see. Can Sidney Powell do something? I'm skeptical that the court... Why would the courts do anything? If the FBI doesn't, if none of the local police do, why do we have faith in the courts?
Well, here's the question. Here's the primordial question. Okay? The legal standard says that you have to prove it to make a difference. You have to prove that voter fraud makes a difference. How do you do that? How do you do that?
Why does it matter? The courts,
but
they're corrupt. So what's it matter?
Hold the door on that for a second.
He's about to release my Kraken, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so let me give you a little pushback on this. Let's just hold the door on the voting. I want to go back to Antifa and Black Lives Matter. Rob, honestly, there is no remedy to their protest, right? On the right or on the left. This is not going to stop. There is no remedy for what they want.
Oh, for what?
Other than total power, correct?
Right. They'll never have enough. I just did a debate last night.
What happens? We
deny
know
their
that
permits for protesting. Just deny the permits.
you can't do that because they show up anyway and they overwhelm the police department.
Anyway, just like the neo-Nazis did when the mayor in this town denied a permit. I got it.
Now, wait, and that's two different questions, Carlos. What can we do about it versus will they ever be satisfied? No, they'll never be satisfied. I thought that was your question.
Right?
You could give them everything they want right now, and they would still say it's not enough. There will always be a step further. They want total control. They want the total enslavement of everyone who disagrees with them. That's what they want. Right. Re-education.
So what's missing?
So, what can we do? Well, look.
No. What's missing? Why are we lucky? And nature abhors a vacuum, doesn't it? It's only a matter of time before a fascist leader rises to the top of their hierarchy.
What do you mean a matter of time? That's what's happened.
Who is that leader?
It's the people behind Joe Biden.
No. Kamala Harris couldn't leave. She couldn't lead you out of the laugh factory. Okay. We're talking about a leader of their movement. There are people who are pushing the movement, but if you want to have the movement grow exponentially, you need to be able to have a leader. How long before they find a socialist, fascist leader?
That's not true.
I disagree. That's my question, right? And Rob, tell me if I'm wrong on this. Same thing, Carl. Once Joe Biden is removed, right? We all know that's the whole deal. They're not even keeping it a secret on their side.
Right.
Kamala Harris then becomes the titular head of that movement.
Yeah, but she's not really a fascist leader.
She goes, I'll go along with that, and I'll go along with that, and I'll go along with that. She's never taken a stand against anything. So by default, is she not the titular head of what's going on?
No, because
to put us back in our homes, to lock us all down again, so they can take everything.
Because she doesn't have the fascist. She doesn't have the fascist bona fides.
Okay, let me ask you this, Carlos. Would a sign of fascism be taking away your rights while they allow their political allies to engage in those same rights they've taken away from you?
Thank you, Rob.
Yes.
Okay, has that happened?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So you're saying that Kamala Harris, please don't make me laugh like her, is the titular leader of Black Lives Matter and Antifa. That's what you're saying today at 11:38 a.m. on the 15th of November.
No,
I'm going to remember it.
You want to say it together? Rob, you want to say it together?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Look, it's not just that simple. Is she the leader of these movements? It's not just that.
She's not going to motivate anybody to do anything.
She doesn't have to.
Will move.
She doesn't have to.
I understand that, but what I'm trying to say to you is, what happens if there was a bona fide fascist leader on top of this?
It would look the exact same. It would look the exact same.
Worse.
It would look the exact same.
So let me ask you a question. If Joe Biden's not his own man, okay, and Kamala Harris is going to take over for him because they're both puppets, right? Who's pulling the strings? Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that you're putting that forward. Who's pulling Kamala Harris's puppet strings? Somebody else. So if they're pulling her strings, telling her exactly what to say, and she says it, how's she not the de facto leader?
Carlos, the question is irrelevant, right? To me, because there are fascists that are leading the movement.
So we're at the worst point now. It could never get worse, especially if there was a bona fide Castro-like leader.
It can always get worse.
But Congress telling Nancy Pelosi that she's done as speaker.
Listen. These are
think about this for a minute. That makes Nancy Pelosi a moderate.
These are not authentically fascist leaders like a Castro or a Che Guevara, I'm asking the hypothetical question.
Carlos, give them a chance. They're not even in office yet. They haven't even sworn in yet. When do they get inaugurated?
Okay.
Can you? Carlos. Okay. They sent old people. They sent old people to die in nursing homes intentionally, so they could win an election to blame the president. And you don't think that
I'm not saying that what they did isn't fascist. I'm saying that there's something worse than Kamala Harris and Biden.
Yeah,
and the
so
people
I
behind
get
them.
you. No, it makes sense.
this
Everybody,
group-
go vote for Kamala because she's keeping the bulwark of the real fascist away. I mean,
No,
come on. I
Okay.
don't understand the point.
Sell it to the average person. And my point is you haven't, because the race was too close, Rob. The race was too close. So you haven't sold it to the average person. It can get worse, is my point.
Right. It can.
Okay, don't argue with me about the 1%. No one understands what the fuck we're talking about. Sell it to the average person. Sell it.
Okay, you
Average
ready?
person.
You ready, Carlos? I'll sell it to the average
Why?
person.
And
Does the
start
average
with-
person?
And start with the fact that we're counting votes after the fact. It was too close. Imagine if there was a bona fide fascist leader. That's my question. Because Biden isn't, and neither is Kamala Harris. Regardless of how you think that what they've done is fascist.
Rob, can I, and then you can jump in on this.
Sure.
You guys ever seen the show Star Trek?
Mhm.
You know the certain race of people called the Borg?
Yes.
Yes. This is what they just did in the election. You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they just did.
Okay.
Rob?
I don't understand what that means. Are you saying that the board didn't have a leader? Because they did.
Yes, Carlos, they did. What I'm saying is what they just told everybody, 72 million people, get with the program. You voted for the wrong ticket. You're going to be assimilated whether you like it or not.
But I don't understand what that means with respect to having the specter of an authentic socialist fascist leader.
So let me put it in different context, and then Rob, please jump in. These are the same people that if you speak out and tell any semblance of truth or unmask anything they've done, your car at 4 a.m. in your driveway will be firebombed.
Right. Okay.
So you will be assimilated.
Carlos, let me ask you this.
So you're saying
there,
that
excuse,
they
real
don't
quick,
need-
real
they don't-
quick.
they don't
Let me
need
ask
it-
you this,
You're
Carlos.
saying that they don't need a leader.
Let me ask you this,
Because
Carlos.
they've already accomplished everything they need to accomplish, so they don't need a fascist leader. That's what you guys are saying.
Go ahead,
Could it
Rob.
have got worse than Che Guevara? Was there someone out there that could have been worse than Che Guevara?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking the question.
Yes, of course there were. You could always. This is a question. It's like saying there is no
Pol Pot,
situation.
right? Pol Pot.
Right, Pol Pot. Is there someone that could have been worse than Pol Pot? Yeah. Is there someone could have been worse than that
Stalin.
guy? Yeah. Is there someone that could have been worse than Stalin? Yeah. So, I mean, yes, if we're making a philosophical point that no matter how bad your life gets or no matter how bad a political situation gets, can it theoretically get worse? Yes, of course. If that's what we're discussing here, I totally agree. Yes, you're right. It could get worse. I see that being used as a useful tool to deflect from talking about how bad the leadership right now that is controlling the country actually is. I see this as well, it could get worse. So what? So then, okay, now
Well,
we've
I'm
discussed
not
it.
deflecting. I'm not deflecting from that.
Well, no, that's what they'll do. That's how it'll be used. Well, you better settle for Kamala
see.
Harris because if
I
you
see.
don't, then this
Okay.
worst guy will come. So, and I don't understand the relevance of like, there is literally no conversation we could ever have then without there being a, well, wait a minute, let's hypothetically view how it could be worse. I guess that's something that we can engage in, we could discuss. There are leaders, there are people that are authoritarian leading the left right now. Just because Joe Biden is an empty suit does not mean there aren't people leading a movement behind him that seek to destroy the middle class and the working class in this country, that are recommending putting conservatives on lists, that are doing whatever they can to steal an election, that are codifying this alliance between the deep state, like the intel communities, the State Department, the mass media, academia, tech companies, and all this stuff. that are saying that you can't defend yourself, that are saying you don't have the right to the First Amendment, that are saying you don't have the right to the police protect you, that are saying that you don't have the right to go to your job unless we deem it to be a worthwhile job. But at the same time, they're telling their supporters they could go riot and protest and they don't have to go by those same definitions. All of this stuff is occurring right now. I agree. There could theoretically be someone that comes along and states this more clear. Yes, we want to effing kill the Trump supporters. I agree. That could happen. That could actually happen. But I don't understand the relevance of spending so much time talking about that now when we see that fascism is currently at our doorstep. That's what I wanted to focus on.
Because the vote was too close.
Well, the reason the vote was...
that you're saying are so bad, why was the vote so close?
Because they control the institutions now. That's why. Because the average person doesn't understand.
But if they do, why can't you prove that the vote was stolen?
Because the system's corrupt.
Okay. That's why. That's the answer to the question. Why was the vote so close? That's the question that I have.
The vote, look, again, there didn't need to be...
If everyone knows that they're corrupt and it's bad for America, why was the vote so close? Why was it so close in Pennsylvania?
Look, I've said this. We don't have to have...
In Arizona.
With the advent of technology, the way we're seeing it, with deepfake technology, with the ability to control the narrative through technology, through social media, through the mainstream media, we're 4 to 8 years away from... They'll never have to steal one vote. Like Bernays knew this. Bernays knew this, right? When he talked about the mass influence of people, it's not hard to influence a group of people, a mass group of people. So the reason the vote's close is because people believe the propaganda. That's why. People, it's the cognitive dissonance that you could see looking at someone that says, you're a racist if you don't want to go to war in Syria and bomb brown people.
Right.
No, I get it. It's the people that say that you're the one engaged in violence if you wear a MAGA hat, but they're engaged in free speech if they punch you in the face. And yes, there are millions of people that believe these contradictory things. They are the people that think that if you don't support Nike and Amazon and the neocons and the neolibs and Obama and Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and all of these people that have been in office for 47 years, they think by supporting them, they're anti-establishment. That's because the authoritarianism is so strong right now that they're able to convince millions of people of that, even without stealing one vote.
Right. So in the clearest way possible, Rob, explain your personal biggest concern or example of voter fraud this year. And then Todd, please.
Of actual fraud?
Right.
Of what I see,
and not the Republican selling points. The doubting Thomas, Rob Knorr school of what's crap and what's real. Tell us your number one core example of what you think is the reason that there was authentic voter fraud this year. That's the one thing that just sticks in your craw.
I mean, I guess that would be the stop counting votes in all of these Democrat-controlled cities.
Me too. Same.
I mean, and now we know that they lied in Atlanta. In Atlanta, they said that a pipe burst. In Atlanta, they said we had to stop counting because of pipe burst. And now through Freedom of Information Act, it looks like in reality what happened was a leaky urinal. Now, why would they lie? If they just said, hey, we were tired, we needed to take a break, that would be one thing. But they made up a story. Why make up the story?
So let's role play this. Why did they stop voting at 11:30 at night in Pennsylvania? Okay, just hold on.
Counting.
In Pennsylvania, why did they stop counting? Pardon me. At 11:30 at night on election night in a state that has basically 7 million votes, and Texas, who processed 11 million votes, did it in one night.
Dude, you want to read something crazy? Go to Glenn Greenwald's Twitter feed today, right? He lives in Brazil. Now, he has no love for the government of Brazil.
The Intercept, right?
He's not with them anymore.
Right,
because
he's the guy that founded the Intercept.
Right? So he talks about, in Brazil, voting is compulsory. So it's illegal not to vote. You know how long it'll take them to count the votes? 1 day, maybe 2. New York State has only counted 70% of the votes. Weeks after the election. How many places are still counting votes? How can that be?
North Carolina, 75%. Correct?
In the richest country, in the richest country in the world, supposedly the most sophisticated country in the world, and we can't do what the government of Brazil does? We can't count our votes in a day or two? Like you need to
give us a 15-second overview real quick of who Glenn Greenwald is and why he's important.
Glenn Greenwald is a left-winger who despises Trump. He was the person who brought forth the allegations of Edward Snowden. He created a website and a newspaper called The Intercept that was supposedly about challenging the intel communities and authority. He was basically drummed out of The Intercept because he was censored for trying to report on the corruption story of Joe Biden.
Right. So a person on the left, firmly on the left, has concerns about corruption in general in the U.S. election. On the left. See, those are the people that you unite with, even though you disagree with them. So what's your number one, Todd, major concern with respect to voter fraud, and why?
So I wrote the story about it. And you want to do voter fraud or voter suppression? Because I see them as one.
Well, no, let's just try to keep it on the national scale for right now. We'll get to that story later that you broke on the election eve. But what's your number one in your mind that you could talk to an average person and say, I believe that there was voter fraud, whether it's widespread or not, but voter fraud where we should have these irregularities lead to more investigations with respect to what happened to the election. What's your number one thing?
So there are, that I've seen, 5 documented instances in 2 different states that were using certain electronic counting software. 3 different occasions in one state where a 2-to-1 ratio was used to flip Trump votes to Biden in the numbers of hundreds of thousands. It happened 3 times.
Right.
And then the same software in another state did it twice.
Let me ask you
that.
Go
ahead, Rob.
A lot of this software was used from countries outside of this country, correct? Would you, if you had to guess?
Exactly what this is the dirty little secret. We talked about it, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago show, is that we ran the coup on ourselves. This is the same software we use in other countries to flip elections the way we want to see them happen through our intelligence community.
Right.
And now our own states are buying this stuff.
Well, it reminds me of the story that Rob talked
happen?
It reminds me of the story that Rob talked about. Was it in the 24-hour digital rally, Rob, the story from the BBC of like the 10 steps that you need to do to be able to take over an election? Well, same thing. Can you give us an idea, Rob, what is Dominion? Tell the average person what Dominion is.
So Dominion,
and your understanding of what happened.
Right. So Dominion is the software company, I believe this is correct, Todd, that was responsible in at least 31 states. Their technology was used in counting votes, right? And this is based out of Canada, I believe, but they also have offices, I believe, in Germany. By the way, if you had to guess, do you think the governments of Canada and Germany would have favored Joe Biden or Donald Trump?
Biden.
Oh, of course. Let's say if the election would have went the other way, and we would have seen hundreds of thousands of votes being tallied in the middle of the night for Trump, and these servers were from Russia, do you think there would be allegations of foreign interference into our election?
And to your point, by the way, real quick, I know keep going, but to your point, who were one of the first 2 world leaders to congratulate President-elect Joe Biden on election night? Trudeau in Canada and Merkel in Germany.
Right. And I believe someone's saying that that maybe they're out of Spain. I can't tell you exactly where Dominion's out of, but it is out of these countries, almost all of which would have rather have seen a Joe Biden presidency. But the allegation is that for example, we saw one particular county in, I believe, in Michigan, where 6,000 votes were switched from the Republican side of the ticket to the Democrat side of the ticket. Now, it was a glitch, right? It's almost mathematically impossible that all of the things we'll talk about of the anomalies that occurred, they always go one direction. Just like when the media just makes mistakes. Every time they make a mistake, it was to harm Donald Trump. It was never the other way. There weren't mistakes to harm Joe. Time. Right. It's always that way. It's always that way, right? So we saw in that particular county, actually a Republican thought he had lost when he went to bed election night, only to find out due to this glitch that he actually won. Now, this glitch is in software that's been used in 31 states and, surprise, surprise, in every one of these swing states that we're talking about, where votes magically went from one side to the other. So that's who Dominion is. Can I prove? Let me say something real quick, and Carlos, Todd, see what you guys think about this. Mm-hmm. Can I definitively prove that these votes were switched and it was fraud? No, I can't. However, to my friends on the left, can you definitively prove if an oil company gives money to Mitch McConnell that that's why he votes in favor of the oil industry? No, you can't.
Well,
but you strongly suspect
they give money. I can prove that they give money.
Right.
There's reports for that. But that McConnell did something because of specifically that, you never know.
That's right. The point that I'm making is that just because you don't I don't know that I don't have 100% proof that OJ killed his wife, but we know he did. All of the evidence strongly suggests that's the case. It's the same here. So now there's a question of,
OJ's still looking for the killer.
Right. Him and
he'll tell you.
Yeah, his boy. Yeah.
Who owns Dominion, Rob? Do you know?
I do not.
Okay. Have you heard about the allegations of the ownership group?
I heard allegations
that has ties to McConnell
and Pelosi and
60% of the controlling interest of the company is owned by Senator Feinstein from California, who didn't know that for 20 years her Chinese driver was a spy.
Right.
Right? Do I have that right?
Yes.
Okay. So you're saying that there are these coincidences and that the average American has to swallow these things and that these glitches existed. So is it a shocking, is it a shock that I think the only one that isn't is Wisconsin, but Nevada and Arizona and Georgia and North Carolina and Pennsylvania and Michigan are all on the system. Is that correct, Todd?
Indeed.
Okay. So the only one that isn't is Wisconsin. And the person that let everybody know about the 6,000 votes is just the poll worker. And we don't know if he's a Republican or a Democrat. He was just the guy that said that there was a glitch. So do the people that are saying that there's no there, that there's no proof, like the Washington Post specifically has said that there is no proof, and CNN has specifically said that there is no proof of any voter suppression, and certainly not widespread suppression, how much information do they have? And now I'm basically channeling Scott Adams here, Rob. How many of those people, of these pundits that work for the Washington Post and CNN, actually have on the ground data that there was no evidence of voter fraud?
They
None,
don't.
right?
Well, they don't.
Right.
And it's the same people that told you they had definitive proof that Trump colluded with Russia. Right. It's the same people. It's the same intel people and their incestuous relationship with the media. It's the same people. Go ahead, Todd.
So, go ahead, Todd.
Well, it's almost like a principal, an athletic director, a coaching staff, and a right-to-know officer, and two different solicitors saying, well, we don't have a room list. It doesn't exist. And then it exists.
Now, listen, let me say something real quick, too. So, again, Carlos, we have some... If you're new to our show, let's be quite honest. You might disagree with us. We talk to people on the left. We do. We have friends on the left.
Right.
Some of the people I'm friends on the left with sent me, two of them, two separate people, sent me the article saying the Department of Homeland Security says this was the most secure election ever. And both of them were just like, this is hilarious. Even they don't think that the fraud was enough to cheat Trump, but they think that clearly in a year where it was unprecedented that you changed the way we vote 3 months before the vote, where we have story after story of people like, I received 8 ballots. I received ballots for people that haven't lived at my house for 30 years. My dog received a ballot. My dead aunt received a ballot. In that election, that all of that was just changed 3 months before. You're going to make the bold claim this was the most secure election ever? That's clearly garbage. And it leads you to distrust these people. They could have said, no, this would have been a far more reasonable statement. The Department of Homeland Security says, we're investigating claims of fraud seriously, and anytime we go through changes in voting, there could be fraud that slips through the cracks. But we don't think that it was enough to switch the outcome of the election, although we will investigate. Now, people on the left would have been happy with that statement and said, yeah, that sounds like that could be something that's reasonable. Even if people like us would say, well, we think the fraud was more substantial. But at least that's a defensible claim. But for the people tasked with investigating if this election was secure, like the Department of Homeland Security, to come out with such a nonsensical claim, most secure election ever, it is, even people on the left that I know are like, well, that's garbage. I can't, what one of them said to me was, I don't blame you for being skeptical. When you see the people tasked with making sure our elections are secure make a ridiculous claim like that. That's the stuff that we're talking about, where it's just, it's abs. And then when I debated this on Friday night, what do you think the first thing all four of the people that I was against said? Department of Homeland Security said it's secure. Department of Homeland Security said it was secure.
These are the one percenters. These are the one percenters that know everything about politics and the whole entire narrative whole entire time. So why do you think? So tell me what the pushback is.
Jesse Smollett just called and said it's a bridge too far. Even he wouldn't say something like that.
And this Homeland Security thing, that's just marketing, right? It's not real. In the sense
but it's marketing with a purpose. It is
the governor of Pennsylvania put it out as if it was real.
That's right. It's gaslight. And this is what you're talking about, Carlos. Yes, this show is for people that aren't spending as much time looking at politics as the 1%. Absolutely. But this is the problem. Those people still, by and large, trust their institutions. So, for example, when Chris Wray comes out and says, oh, no, Antifa, it's not really a group. And, actually the real problem is white supremacists. The average people believe that. When the Department of Homeland Security comes out and says, this was the most secure election ever. If you're just from the outside, you work 9 to 5, you come on, you turn the news on an hour a night, and then you spend some time with your family, and you hear that Trump's Department of Homeland Security said it was the most secure election ever, you're like, oh, man, must be the case then.
And Chris Wray is the director of the FBI.
Right. So that's constantly these appeals to authority. And this is the big argument that I have all the time with people, which is I say that this establishment is corrupt. And they say, no, it's not corrupt. And you know how we'll prove it? By asking the people in the establishment. Chris Wray says it's not corrupt. James Comey says it's not corrupt. John Brennan says it's not corrupt. So therefore it must not be corrupt. Adam Schiff says it's not corrupt. And so what you should do is look for the double standards. Not from me, not from Todd or Carlos, but with the people with actual power. The people that actually have media companies, the people that are elected in Washington, the people that are, the billionaires that are buying the politicians off to have their way. Look at their double standards. So let me just give you one. And Todd, maybe you could comment on this. I don't know if you've covered this. There was a whistleblower that came out of Erie from the U.S. Postal Service, correct? Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. This whistleblower alleged that he overheard a conversation from his supervisor and another coworker talking about backdating ballots. He was so troubled by this that he told 2 other coworkers, and then that day, it was November 5th, so this is the day, or this occurred after the election. On November 5th, he was ordered to pick up a couple of ballots and bring them in, even though it was well after the election day and they weren't postmarked. He was so troubled by this that he actually wrote the date that he received those on the envelope because he thought, shouldn't we know that these were unpostmarked and came after the election?
Right.
He then blew the whistle. Now, here's the double standard. Is this gentleman telling the truth or not? I can't tell you. Neither can Carlos or Todd. We don't know.
Right.
He signed a sworn affidavit.
Right.
He then had an investigator from the USPS, the United States Postal Service, interrogate him for 2 hours. Say that he would face legal jeopardy. Then say, isn't it possible that you could have misinterpreted what they meant? Couldn't they have meant X, Y, Z? And he's like, yeah, I guess. Let me give you an example, Carlos. If you ever hear me saying, hey, I'm going to kill my dog, you might report that and say, my God, I heard Rob say he's going to kill his dog. But then I could retort to you, isn't it possible I was talking about in a video game? You'd be like, right. I guess that's possible. But that doesn't mean you recanted your statement. Anyways, through them basically using interrogation techniques on this whistleblower, He then changed his statement to say, well, I heard what I heard, but maybe they meant something different. That information was then immediately leaked to the Washington Post, who put out a national story, whistleblower recants story, even though he didn't recant it. He just acknowledged, I guess it's possible they could have meant something else. Now, if you're listening and you're like, this sounds like too much to follow, just answer me one question. What did the left say about whistleblowers 7 months ago? Didn't they say that they're to be protected above any other class of people? They're heroes in this country. The whistleblower against Donald Trump was so important, we couldn't even know his name. But now they treat a whistleblower... Yeah. Now we treat a whistleblower, again, as soon as it goes against their side. Now, oh man, this guy's a damn liar. Get the interrogators in there. Oh, do whatever you can to get him, lie to him and say he's facing legal jeopardy and this, that, and the other. That's how you know. That's how you know the double standard. The same people right now that are telling you we need unity called Trump supporters racist, Nazis, uneducated liars for 4 years. The same people right now that are telling you Trump just needs to concede and it would be good for the country are the same people that fought for 4 years launching investigation after investigation because Russia stole the election for Trump in 2016. Those double standards, if you're watching, you're like, this is too much to follow. I don't know. Ask yourself this. Why do those double standards exist? And if once you understand those double standards do exist, why would you trust those people, those establishment people, when they say, oh, there's no election fraud, this is the most secure election ever? Says the same people that told you that Trump was colluding with Russia to steal an election.
Well, I keep going back to the same thing, Rob. And the primordial question that I have is, why was it so close?
Again, because the propaganda is effective. I mean, I don't, even without fraud, there were going to be millions upon millions of people that voted against Donald Trump. Part of it's Trump's fault, by the way. Part of it is people don't like me tweets.
No question.
You know.
No question.
But there are people.
Before we get to that, here's the real question that I have for both of you, coming off of that question of why it was so close. So you said that, no one trusts the media, okay? And the media has a blockade against everything that's happening with respect to being able to tell our side of the story. Rob first, then Todd. Obviously, these videos that you are seeing on Twitter of the violence that Antifa and Black Lives Matter is perpetrating against not just Trump supporters, but people in general. And I obviously, Andy No on Twitter is the one that posts most of them. And I guess Miles Chong is the other guy. What is the effect of these very persuasive videos of violence of Black Lives Matter and Antifa fighting the narrative or the lack of narrative of the mainstream media? Rob first, please.
Look, the more we go,
it's effective, right?
So you're saying if people see Black Lives Matter beating people, does that persuade them that maybe the media is full of it? Is that?
They're very persuasive videos, right? I mean, what's your analysis of that?
Sure.
Of all these videos that you see on Twitter of people showing violence from Antifa and Black Lives Matter versus the mainstream media and George Stephanopoulos not having anything.
Once you begin to realize that the media isn't the media, they're not journalists, they're just propagandists for the state, for the establishment, then it makes sense. What the media wants you to believe is, don't believe your lying eyes, don't believe it. It's not violent. That's what they want you to believe. When you see that they're lying, look, I say this all the time. We need to understand the battle is this. You have the globalists, the establishment on their side, and then you have us that are trying to wake people up on the left or the right, it doesn't matter. People like us that are populist or that want the people to have a voice. But the vast majority of people are somewhere in the center, right? Over 80% of people.
Right.
They win by keeping those people ignorant and uninformed. We win not by persuading them that we're right,
and inactive,
just by
inactive.
That's right. We win by allowing them to see evidence. That's how we win. So the more evidence they get to see of this corruption, the better. The more that the establishment can conceal that evidence, the better for them. That's what it is. Now, how do you know which side's right? Because name me one side in history that has been on the morally righteous side that was for misleading people that was against transparency.
Right.
The side that wants
So
transparency.
you think they're effective? These videos that you see on social media showing this violence.
They're effective, but becoming less so. Because there's so much. It's tell the bigger lie. Tell the biggest lie, right? This is what Stalin's camp believed. And so when you could see, this was the big problem. This is my big problem with Trump and the fact that no one of consequence was held legally accountable for the coup against Trump, right? And it's this. When you see it, now we all see it. We all see the evidence.
That's a fantastic point.
You know, we see it. We see the corruption of the FBI. We see the corruption of the media. And we just don't care anymore. And we still listen to them to some extent. Now, me and you might not listen, but we allow them to control the conversation. And so what happens is this. At first, it may have been shocking. The best example is this. Almost the entirety of the media told the American people that Donald Trump said Nazis were good people. Now, all you had to do to confirm that was wrong was listen to the 5-minute comment Trump gave. If you would have listened, you would have heard him say, there were good and bad people on both sides. Of course, I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis, the KKK. They're terrible people that ought to be condemned. But there were other people there, right? So he clearly doesn't call Nazis good people. Yet the media told us for 3 years, so much so that Joe Biden says that was the one reason that he ran. Was because
a real
Trump,
hoax.
That's right. So that's a hoax. Now, all of us know that. And yet, did it matter? Does it matter?
He didn't defend it properly in the debates.
Well, that's true. That's true. But the point is this.
So
it's the same with the violence.
Fantastic point.
Right. It's the same with the violence. We allowed them. Yes, you can see that they're lying. It matters less and less.
So,
because the average person is just going to accept it.
Just to paraphrase, and this is a fantastic point. You can have all the Andy Ngo and Miles Chong, I think his name is, can have all the video in the world, all the proof in the world. But if the FBI and BAR and law enforcement and governors and other law enforcement entities in this country don't start having prosecutions and convictions, it doesn't matter.
Carlos, let me put it this way.
That's how vile the institutions are.
That's right. Let me put it this way. You remember Aaron J. Danielson? He was the Trump supporter that was executed by Antifa members in Portland. You remember this?
This was this summer.
Yeah, a few months back.
When they triangulated him and they caught right.
Yeah. Now we
and
see
the guy ended up dying in Seattle or in Washington when they caught him a day or two later, correct?
Right. The guy who murdered him was killed by police. Yes. Anyways, there's video of that. We can see several angles of that video. You hear them shout, he's over here. You could see the guy didn't pull a gun on them or anything, was murdered in cold blood. I just want to let you know, despite that video evidence being out there are probably millions, and I've talked to many of them. Just go to twitch.com or twitch.tv because the politics on Twitch is dominated by the left. The overwhelming idea on the left, on Twitch at least, and I would assume that means there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, I believe this is, there's no evidence that was a murder. There's none.
Right. What they're saying is that we killed him because he deserved to die.
Right. And it doesn't matter what the video showed. There could have been a slight hand gesture or something like that justified them shouting, here he is over here, and then execute him. That could be justified, they say. Now, Kyle Rittenhouse, who you could see the gunshots behind him, see them chasing him down to beat him, he's a murderer. How do you reach people? The problem is the propaganda is so strong, right? The propaganda is so strong, and it's been allowed... here's the brutal honesty. You want to know the honesty? Want to know when the time to fight back against this would have been? 30 years ago. That would have been the time to fight back before the indoctrination had occurred for generation after generation after generation.
When conservatives and Republicans were taking the high road, right, Rob?
Right. And it's like, and again, it's like, and I know there are people out there that enough's enough. I'm not going to watch. I'm not going to refuse to go out and exercise my First Amendment to support Trump or to support Republicans. I'm not going to do that. And if I'm attacked, I'll defend myself. If you're attacked, you have the right to defend yourself. I'm just telling you, you will be thrown in jail. You will be made out to be the bad person. There is nothing you can do about that right now. That's why it's important that we win this information war. That's why I talk to people on the left. Do I reach many of them? No, probably not. If this weekend was any...
Yeah, but they keep inviting you because...
Look, it's ratings for them.
Yes, it's rating for them, but you're convincing people. I've seen some of these things.
Well, I do think some of the more moderate people on the left, I think, could be convinced. And eventually, look, you don't convince people in one meeting. You talk to them over and over, and it's not just what you're saying, it's how you act and control yourself that also matters. But the point I'm trying to make is this, like, the war will be won, not through violence. The war is won by shining light and disinfectant on their corruption.
Right.
That's why corruption's the only issue that matters. Right. And until we do that, I mean, again, what do you do if your local police will arrest you when people break into your property and threaten to kill you and you just brandish a weapon? What do you do in that situation? They didn't fire their weapon, the McClowskys. They just brandished their weapon as people broke into their property and threatened to kill them. Those people that broke in were not charged. They weren't charged with the crime. But the McClowskys who defended themselves were charged with the crime. What do you reasonably do now? If you're them, what was the correct solution to them? Take your beating? I joked about this. But what the solution is to pray to your Black Lives Matter God, to pray to your Antifa gods, to your Biden voter gods. Please, if you must beat me, please don't do so lethally. Please beat me instead of my wife. That's your rights, according to the left. That's what you have the right to do. What are you going to do? Call the police? That's what the McClowskys did. Police said, nope, we're not showing up. So you just pray that they choose not to beat you. That is what they want for this country. And so when I see people in my chat today saying, oh, you're anti-American if you think that these people can't be appeased, if you think that Black Lives Matter would never achieve a goal that they would be satisfied with. That is exactly what their goal is. Their goal is total power.
Exactly right. What are they listening to? Todd, off of Rob's point of all these videos mean nothing if they're not adjudicated. You are the resident expert in dealing with a state government that just will not adjudicate any crimes and will use authoritarianism to be able to control the state. Did you see the comments by Fetterman yesterday or the day before in a tweet that said that basically all these allegations of voter fraud are a joke? And I'm going to try to get his Twitter account up. So your thoughts on the lack of adjudication in some of these cases, based on your experience in dealing with the governor's office.
It's just a microcosm of what's going on. When you ask the governor directly to his face, the Monday or Tuesday after the Harrisburg International Airport rally that Trump has, and say, you're laying 200,000 national deaths and 8,000 in Pennsylvania at the feet of the president. Is that fair when you and your Secretary of Health sent COVID positives back into the nursing homes? And he talks about how I'm conflating two issues. No, that's a pretty direct question. Nobody's ever held accountable.
Right. That's the problem. I mean, that's the problem. And look, say what you will about Trump and the Republicans. Todd, you know this. There are a lot of Republicans at the state level that I have huge respect for. I think Carlos and Todd, you do as well. I'm a strong Trump supporter. But they're not getting the job done. Until these people are held accountable. I mean, for God's sakes, here in Pennsylvania, how is it not... They sent old people to nursing homes with COVID. Tens of thousands died because of that. And it can't even get a blip on... It's nowhere in our major stories in this country. And it wasn't just Pennsylvania. It was other Democrat-controlled states. How is that possible? How are they not forced to answer these questions? This isn't like Bridgegate with Chris Christie, which, whatever. I'm no Chris Christie huge fan. But remember, he shut down a bridge for political reasons. Oh, my goodness. Right. Look at the coverage that got. We're talking about people that died. And, imagine what it would have been like to be one of them. Imagine being, a 90-year-old woman. And you have great grandkids. And you're in the nursing home, right? And they tell you, the nursing home tells you, look, there's this new disease called COVID, and because of that, your family can't come visit you. Imagine how heartbroken you are. You don't get to see your family. But then you get a new roommate. Oh, they have COVID. And you can't go anywhere. Now, your family can't come under the thought that they might bring COVID, but your new roommate, they have COVID. And then as you sit there on your deathbed and haven't got a chance to see your family in the last moments of your life, the last thought that goes through your mind is, oh, my family won't even be able to have a funeral for me because of COVID. Now, that happened to tens of thousands of people. And we can't get answers? We can't get one government official to be like, yeah, that was a mistake. But these are the people we have to trust that says, oh, but trust us, there wasn't any election fraud. It's totally up and up. Oh, it's Donald Trump's fault that people died of COVID. I mean, this isn't partisan. That's just wrong. And if you don't get fired up about that, if you're more mad because you went to Walmart and saw a guy without a mask on than you are that your governor sent COVID patients into nursing homes where predictably tens of thousands of people died, if you're more upset about the guy not wearing a mask at Walmart, you need to rearrange your priorities. And the fact that we can't, that's the stuff, Carlos, that you're talking about. How do we wake people up? Right? Like, these are the things.
Oh, it's so close. I just don't get it.
You don't have to be a
Why
robot.
are people demanding answers? Like,
and by the way,
Todd, I just want to ask you again, because I asked Rob and he answered. So I want to ask you, so for the record, so we have this on record. Why did the state of Pennsylvania stop counting votes on election night? Do we have an answer to that?
Yeah, because if they kept counting, Trump was going to win.
No, I'm talking about a real answer.
That is a real answer.
No, an official answer. What is the
from
official
the administration?
Answer? From anybody. From anybody. I mean, anyone
You're
that you
not
might
gonna-
have collided against.
Yeah, you're
Okay,
not going to get.
I know the line of what I think they did it.
Yeah,
but-
you're
but-
not going to get a straight answer out of the administration.
Right. And that is on the playbook that Rob's story from the BBC last week, and I can't find it right now, but it's one of the major things that the CIA uses to subvert elections in other countries, and that is to stop counting.
That's right. There were, and
And
by the
then
way,
and then they yelled at Trump for tweeting "Stop the count" when they had already quit.
right, and the reason Trump said stop the count was because Republicans weren't allowed in the room to watch the counts. That was the context of Trump saying stop the count, as we saw in Philadelphia, which, by the way, Todd, maybe you know more about this as a journalist than me. I keep getting pushback, people telling me, oh, Fox News said that story was wrong. This is the facts of this, right? There were poll watchers that were allowed in to watch the polls that were conservatives in Philadelphia. However, they were kept more than 100 feet away. So then a court hearing occurred which said that they were allowed in. Can you take it from there?
There was a list. They put a list out that's been produced that said Corey Lewandowski is not allowed in. This person is not allowed in for the Trump campaign. They had a list that they gave the security guys and the police officers that they weren't going to let people in.
If you allow sharing, I'll post it.
I think it's already there. Go ahead.
But do we have proof that list is accurate? That's a legitimate list?
Absolutely. They produced it.
Okay. See, I saw that list, but I didn't comment on it because you never know online. People could just put stuff up.
But it's no different than the FOIA and the right to know that they did in Georgia over the leaking urinal instead of the broken pipe.
Right. And also then the facts of this case is Trump's team went to court and a judge ruled that actually they were wrong. The Democrats were wrong that were running the show, and that the Trump team were allowed to have poll watchers within 6 feet, correct?
Yeah, so here's what's going to happen. All these cases, and here's what's even better, and I'm so glad we have this show because I want to tell you. There's the list right there.
Right. So the list says, do not accept Goldstein, who's I think an attorney, and same thing with Shepperton, McCaffrey, Lewandowski, no entry. Mahoney, O'Brien, Chang, Winnie. These are all attorneys, I believe.
All Republicans, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all there. Everybody needs to know this, okay?
And this is on November 10th. 7 days. 7 days after the election.
Guys, you need to pay attention. The audience needs to pay attention. If you're hanging your hat on the local federal judge here in Williamsport, Judge Brand, that he's going to do a damn thing about this election, he has the entire spotlight of the world. He's finally made it, everybody. He gets to be important because he's on the bench.
Right.
If you're expecting anything but a punt out of this clown, you're dreaming.
So
if you read any of his opinions, any of his orders since he got on the bench, he's a statist.
Right.
He sides with Lockheed University all the time. He sides with the Bureau of Police all the time. You guys might as well throw it out right now and go to the Supreme Court.
Right. He was appointed by Obama and you know.
And nominated by whom, Carlos? Rob, guess who nominated him during the Obama years? Guess who nominated him?
Senator Toomey.
Senator Pat Toomey.
Yep. Well, that's the problem. Yeah.
That's the problem.
Going, oh my gosh, Todd just called a federal judge and that. No, he can leave.
In Pennsylvania, Todd, aside from my question of why they stopped counting, what's the most damning evidence of voter fraud in your opinion?
Oh, the mail-in ballots. The mail-in ballots that they can't even verify where they came from, who these people are. The percentage of ballots that only had one race voted upon. Right.
Right. So you're saying you're saying that those people, okay, had ballots, mail-in ballots, okay, and these ballots basically came in. So how do you tell the difference between mail-in ballots and regular ballots, other than if the machines that they're scanned through have time code? Because I'm assuming that they started counting the mail-in ballots after 8 p.m. or were they counting them the whole entire day, do you think?
Right. So
do we know?
That's exactly right. The understanding that I have from the court filings is that they were jamming those ballots in with the regulars. Which
when they were told
to and not counted.
Right. So how do we prove, Rob, where those ballots come from?
You don't. You have to take it. Like let's. I don't have any special knowledge of ballots counting, but let's assume this ballot comes in an envelope, right? Open up the ballot, the mail-in ballot. You open it up. Now, somewhere on that envelope is a postmark, right? The date that ballot was mailed. Correct?
Right.
Okay. If that envelope isn't saved, even if there was a code for if it was mail-in or not, how do we know if it was postmarked pre the election or post the election, or if it had a postmark at all?
I have an answer to that question, actually.
Okay.
And this is where, as a Republican operative, this is where I would, in terms of the election team, there had to be a team in charge of this. There had to be a team in Allegheny County and a team in Philadelphia County, making sure that they were watching the garbage everywhere. See, because if those things were thrown out, if those envelopes were thrown out, they had to be thrown out someplace. Were they shredded?
But the question is, so
were they thrown in the fire bin?
Okay, but
were
let
they
me
in the garbage and then put out to, you know.
But wait, it's still not making sense to me. So let me probe you on this. So your intent is, if it was done right, they saved the envelope with every ballot.
They should have, with every mail-in ballot, is my understanding.
So that's their policy that they're supposed to.
Part of it is that there's no clear information on that.
Well, that's what
I would have been Johnny on the spot if I knew the rules. Is that if the only way to be able to prove that the ballot was postmarked is you had to save the ballot, not so much with the envelope, but you had to save the envelopes.
Well, the only thing that matters is this point, if they saved the envelopes or not. I doubt they did. If they didn't,
they
then
said
what?
In Pennsylvania, they threw them out.
Right. So then,
where they threw them out to,
right?
Where they threw them out to, I'm shocked that there isn't a media outlet or there isn't a representative of the Trump campaign that's not Johnny on the spot to try to find out, you know, where they went to.
Anyway, so then the point is this. So then so let's say we order a recount. So they say, okay, here's the stack of ballots here from Philadelphia County, and these ones were all postmarked pre the election. How do you know that's true?
Right. That's a very good point.
Right. So
there's a lot of questions.
Guess what the relief is according to the court? Guess what you have to do?
Say that again, Todd?
Guess what the relief they're seeking is from the court that the court would have to order? They're all getting thrown out after a certain point because y'all jacked up the count. We
So
can't verify.
how
They
do
be
you-
gone.
But
They be gone.
Yeah, no. I think it's the reverse, Todd. I think it's the reverse. Not to be a jerk, but the question is, and the legal standard is that you have to prove it for it to make a difference, that it made a difference. That's what the legal standard is.
That's the
And
argument I'm making.
That's my concern. That's my concern. And I think that it's Rob's concern too. Say it again?
They stop the count, and then all of a sudden that 600,000 ballot lead vote count goes away. Statistically, with X number of ballots remaining to be counted,
is that illegal? Is that a legal argument that you think would be persuasive with the Supreme Court, Rob?
I think it is.
Oh, it's persuasive to us. Is the Supreme Court, the same Supreme Court that said that we could go to a casino but not to a church? Do you think that's...
Rob, here's the other part of this. When you will not allow what's legally allowed to happen and they get to observe, whatever wasn't observed's got to get thrown out.
Okay, let me ask you this, Todd. What if they just say no? What if the courts are like, no, we disagree? Then what?
Right, exactly right. That's the concern.
Then we don't have a constitution or a republic anymore.
Right. That's exactly the point.
From that jumping off point is where I want to have the discussion. Rob, what happens next?
Well, I mean,
because this is why I asked about the leader being a total fascist. So this is where I want to go.
I'm sorry, did I just break news at 12:30? Did I just break the news at 12:30?
The jumping off point, Rob, is what happens next if the Supreme Court says, nope, we're punting, and that's it. What happens next, in your opinion?
I mean, this is what my show's been about for 2 weeks now. That is what will happen. The courts will not overrule. They won't. And I say this because I also, despite the fact that I think a lot of people were like, no, Trump will win this easily. I said, no, they'll do everything they can to steal an election. I was right about that. Hope I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the courts will not overturn this, despite what evidence is brought to them. And so then where do we go? Well, we acknowledge the fact that we will probably not see a populist leader in 30 years in this country. We acknowledge the fact that basically the Republicans that are left are feckless or worthless or corrupt. And we start trying to claw our way back into the culture war, which will take years and years and years. But what else are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Well, how do you do that, Todd? If the prize is the United States and turning it socialist, how do you reverse it? Do you know of a single instance where it was reversed, where socialism took place and it was reversed?
Oh no! Once the train leaves the station, it's down the tracks. I mean, you want to hear the plan to possibly slow it down or to reverse it? From the day of the inauguration, you're going to see rally after rally after rally because if Trump is not sworn in again, he's going to launch a campaign for 2024. And every day of the Biden-Harris administration is going to be former President Trump, right, campaigning for 2024. Here's the other part of this that I don't think anybody gets so far. If he's not reelected, he's already got plans to do a 24/7 TV channel, Trump TV. He's bringing everybody with him.
Let me ask you this, though, Todd, in all honesty.
They're going to bang away every single day.
Why does it matter? If you're admitting that this election was stolen, and now we're saying, well, hypothetically, the courts do nothing about it. Let's say Trump has 90% approval thanks to his media company going into 2024, and they steal the election again. And then what?
Right.
He doubles down on his media station in 2024?
It's first of all, respectfully, he's not running in 2024.
It sounds good.
It's a great thing for Republicans to make themselves feel better. And have you ever heard the meme? Well, it's Trump twice, and then Ivanka twice, and then Trump Jr. twice, and then Barron twice. No. No. Stop talking crazy talk. There's only one person in that family that has the chops to do this. Only one. And you're looking at him right now. Everybody else, not even close. Not even close.
He's not going to run.
I'm sorry.
2024.
He's not running. Okay. A media station. What is the benefit to the American people of having Trump media with Tucker Carlson at 8:00? What is the benefit? If we haven't had the benefit of Trump, of Tucker Carlson on Fox, and the benefit of Republican leadership in the last 4 years at all, there is no benefit. How will it be a benefit in the future? Listen, we need to be able to tell the American people what to do next. And if Biden wins, what happens next? What is the first thing that you do? And
take care of yourself and your family.
Exactly right. And do that really well.
Which means when you go to the grocery store, don't buy 17 things of toilet paper. Buy one extra for you and your family every time you go. Just one extra. Don't
Can I
go
ask
get
you a
17
question?
all at once.
Have you guys been to the grocery store this week?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask you a question? Why are these grocery stores, knowing that the people that are dying are 70 years old or older, excluding people who have severe comorbidities that are younger, why are they letting people who are 70 years old into the grocery store and not forcing them to shop online and have the food delivered outside? Explain it to me.
Because COVID and the reaction to it is political. They put look, we could talk ad infinitum about all of the examples. They said healthy people need to be locked down because they could potentially spread COVID to the vulnerable. And then they said the vulnerable need to be forced into nursing homes with COVID patients. So us three are locked down because there's a chance that we could, if we went to work, then someone could come to our work that then would go to the grocery store, that meets someone else that's at the grocery store, that goes and visits their grandma, that gets their grandma sick. So we all had to be locked down in that chain. But grandma was forced in a room with a COVID patient. So yeah, I mean, there is a litany. Yes. Why wouldn't you instead say, if you're an elderly person, please stay home? We will provide government people, if necessary, resources through the government to provide you with access to someone who will grocery shop for you. We will provide individual nurses to the best of our ability for people in nursing homes. That way, if there is a spread, it's from one nurse to one patient instead of one nurse to 50 patients. Like, there's a litany of things we could have done. We could still do to make it better. But instead, we're shutting down schools. That's what happened in my county again this week. Virtual learning only, even though every study shows that this is less infectious and less deadly than the common flu for people under the age of 18. Instead, we're locking them down again, right? So it's all political. That's what it is. And look, there will be lockdowns that come from things like climate change in the future. It used to be that our government, in order to exert massive control over us and massively infringe upon our rights, they used to have to sell us on a war or a boogeyman that was a person, right? Like terrorism. We had to take away your Fourth Amendment rights through the Patriot Act because of terrorism, because terrorism will kill you all. And if you question it, then you don't care about this country. So shut up and give your rights away. That's the only thing that will keep you safe. Well, the problem with that is the more interconnected the world becomes, it's hard to sell that all of those evil Russians are out to get you. You can go on your computer and talk to a Russian. All of a sudden, they don't seem so evil. The same's true with terrorism to a large extent. But you know what you can't go talk to? The climate, the virus.
Right.
So they're the big fear monger now. Oh, we're all going to die of the virus. Oh, we're all going to die of climate change. So we have to, and it just so happens the solution to all of these things is always screw over the average person. Bigger government telling the average person what they have to do. Oh, and all the people that financially are connected to that bigger company, they benefit too. Like, for example, you might say, man, it's been a devastating economic hit through COVID. All of those rich billionaires must have suffered. Check out Amazon stock. How they doing? Oh, they're doing quite nicely, aren't they? You think Zuckerberg or Dorsey are taking a hit? Nope. Isn't that odd how that works? It's always about screwing over the average person. So that's what we'll see more of. And people will I just did the debate the other day. They're certain that we're all dead of climate change. Certain of it. We have to enact the Green New Deal. We have to. And all of the garbage in there about race and gender and, retrofitting every building in the country for things like comfort, all of that. We have to accept that all. We have to. Sorry, it's the only way forward. Massive socialism, massive government, it's the only way going forward. So to answer your question, I don't know why. Well, I wouldn't want the store telling old people they can't come shop, but I don't know why the government, they're sending out quarantine letters. Why aren't they sending out letters to the elderly saying, stay at home? My God, there's a pandemic. Haven't you looked out their window? It's Mad Max out there. The virus is everywhere. Sure, it's 99.97 survivable, but it's hell on earth. So stay at home, old people. Nope. Instead, they'll shut down church. They'll shut down young people working. They'll shut down schools.
I know that it's ageism. I understand that it's ageism by telling people that are over 70 years old that they can't go to the store. I understand that. But if you're telling the whole entire world that you have to be locked down and you have to wear a mask and you can't go out or you can't have your business be open more than 25%, or you have to be closed down, like beauty shops, unless it's the one that, Nancy Pelosi goes to, or the barber that, the New York State governor's brother goes to. We can tell these people, right? If we're going to use these authoritarian techniques, then we can do them and target them to save lives, not to just control people, right? Right? I understand. I just don't understand why people that are 70 years old are going to the supermarket instead of being outside. And why wouldn't they be smart enough to be able to do that? Why would they put themselves in harm's way? The answer to that question is what, Todd? Why would they put themselves in harm's way? Why would they go to Giant in Loyalsock at 70 years old, knowing that most of the people that die are in their age group?
Because they want to live as free people.
Fine. That's a great answer. Apparently, no one cares though, right?
Look, it's real. Like, I have people in the... Go ahead, Todd.
This is why we have this show. It's why. They are willing to stand on their own 2 feet, protect their own family and their interests, and go to the store to go get the supplies that they need for themselves and their family. And no government or any other body is going to tell them what to do.
It is so obvious. It's a point that I don't even know why we have to talk about, because everybody knows this. Everybody knows this. Every single person in America knows this. You ready? You ready for this bombshell? People will say, it's okay for me to do it. It's okay for me. My reasonings for wanting to do the things I do are legitimate. They're okay. But it's the other people that are the problem. That's the world we live in. And so it's how I can look at my friends.
The greatest point I think you've ever made since I've met you.
Right. Thank you. Well, maybe I just haven't made many great ones.
You're saying I'm not paying attention?
But no,
please repeat that and give us 30 seconds more of what you mean by that. That was absolutely rocking.
Everybody thinks that their reasonings for doing things are totally acceptable. It's everyone else that's the problem. So let me give you an example, a real world example. Great friend of mine, won't mention his name, one of the nicest people you ever meet. Not a Trump supporter, probably a Biden voter, I don't know. But he posted on Facebook here in my little town that I live in, he was ashamed of the people that attended the local county fair in the summer because they were going to spread so much disease and spread COVID so much. Now understand, that county fair, there were a lot of people whose livelihoods depended on that, particularly younger people that raise livestock. There weren't any county fairs around here like there are every summer. There weren't, except this one in Clarion County. So yeah, there were a lot of people that showed up, and some of that showing up was against president, that's what he seems like, Dictator Wolf's orders that he gave out. But then that same person they were never so proud as to violate those orders to attend a Black Lives Matter rally. See, when he was out there for that cause was important enough. So these rules, these orders, the laws are arbitrary. Right. All of this stuff that they say to you, oh, you're selfish if you go out. You're selfish if you don't wear a mask, right? By the way, I'm saying this as someone who wears a mask almost everywhere I go. So I'm not saying I'm against masks, but they'll say it's okay for us to violate the orders because we're doing so for a good reason. It's you people that are the problem. And understand, this is how authoritarians operate. Rules for thee, not for me. Did you see Nancy Pelosi had to cancel the big Democrat dinner that they were going to have because California was telling people, you can't have Thanksgiving dinner with your family. You keeping score yet? You can't go with your family and have Thanksgiving dinner. You can go burn down LA. You could do that. 100,000, you could go cheer for Joe Biden. No problem. You could do that, but you can't have dinner with your family at Thanksgiving. Now, the Democrats are going to have a big Thanksgiving dinner, a big fundraising dinner. That's allowed, right? You can't go to your funeral, but you can go to John Lewis's funeral, right? Are you starting to see this, right? And this is the double standard that socialists always and authoritarians always apply. Just the other night, I had someone tell me, I would give in the debate, 99% of my money I would give to the government if they ordered me to do so in the form of taxes to fight climate change. And that's because I care about this world and you don't. So that's a moral claim, right? They're more moral than me. I said, well, if you're so moral, what's stopping you from giving 99% of your money? Is it your argument that millions of people are negatively affected by climate change?
It's one of my favorites of yours.
Right?
Yes.
So give your money up. Oh, no, right. That's different. Look, we could have the argument of what the law should or should not be as far as taking care of people and doing the best. That's fine. But once you start to bring morality in it, or once you start to say, well, I'm selectively allowed to abide by this law or order based on if I have good intents in doing it, then you're becoming an authoritarian. You're becoming a hypocrite, right? So just like the person that says we should give up, like Bernie Sanders yells at you for your carbon footprint as he has a third lake house and flies first class, right? It's the same thing here. Oh, no. You have to be locked down. Your schools have to be, I thought, follow the science. All the science shows that we shouldn't be locking schools down. The head of the CDC said more kids are dying as a result of lockdowns than as a result of COVID. So if we're following the science, why are we shutting schools down? Well, because of feels, that's why. And when you allow your government to do these two things, take away your rights, but do so in an arbitrary manner that allows them to pick winners or losers, you have an authoritarian dictatorship. That's what you have. Now, factor in all of the shenanigans we see around the election, even before we get to fraud, with just their total control of the flow of information. The mainstream media, the intel community, the State Department, wealthy people that run these tech companies, all of them. Oh, we're going to censor the New York Post, the oldest newspaper in the country. We're not going to cover stories critical of Joe Biden. If they could drag Joe Biden, the least energetic person to ever run for president, if they could drag him across the finish line, who is it that they can't? You think your vote matters in 2024? They won't even have to have any fraud the day of the election. They'll just pick the media and the tech companies and the intel agencies. They'll pick who they want to win, and then they'll just do a narrative blitz for 6 months. That person could stay in their basement and they'll win. That's the country you want to live in? If you're on the left and you're truly like a progressive, do you think they're going to allow a true progressive to get in there that screws over these corporate people that are paying for the elections? You think that's what's going to happen? You think the companies that run the people that run the New York Times and CNN and the Washington Post, you think they're going to allow a candidate to get through that's going to actually punish them? You think that's going to happen? What is happening?
11 billion is the latest number that I heard that was spent on this election. 11 billion.
Yeah. Wait. Say again?
11 billion is the number that I've heard that was spent in this election by everybody.
I would say that's
look how much
grossly,
further it got him.
I would say that's way under. I mean, there was, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't the estimates in 2016, the final estimate, $500 billion?
Yeah,
But even so, whatever that number is.
I heard that. I just saw that number. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but that's the one I heard.
But
right.
Whatever that number is, look what it did for the future.
Right.
And I see people, like I even see people in the chat, like if I could respond to the people watching us, just a couple things. One said that the reason that I'm against these COVID lockdowns is because, and just to give you an idea of the tolerant left, excuse the language here for a minute, because my fat ass will have a heart attack and need to go to the hospital. This is who we deal with on the left. This is the tolerant left, right?
They're cheering for your death.
Right. So that's, so let me give you.
The overarching point that you made, Rob, is that we're the other people that are the problem. With respect to your point, us, the regular American people, are the other people that you're talking about. Is that not correct?
Right. So let me give you a story of how that works. Actually, if you look at the average of hospitals,
Actually, your ass is not that fat. I mean, I
it's
think
enough. I should lose some weight.
You know.
I should lose some weight, but that's not the point. Is this? If you look at the actual numbers from hospital capacity, actually, we're very similar right now with hospital capacity in the month of November that we were in the past 3 years on average. So it differs state to state, but usually it's within a percentage point or two. There aren't places right now that we see that hospitals are being overridden. That's not occurring. And what happened in the name of keeping these hospitals not in full capacity? You know what happened? We didn't allow elderly people that had COVID to go to the hospital. We were afraid the hospitals would get filled up. So where did we send those elderly people with COVID? Oh, we sent them to the nursing homes. That's where we sent them. So the very people that are telling you, well, we need lockdowns to keep the hospitals empty so that your fat ass could go get care when you have a heart attack, those very people are actually cheering to send COVID patients into nursing homes, causing tens of thousands of deaths. Meanwhile, the people that had, if you did pay attention, you people on the left that are so tolerant saying things like this, you would see that actually studies are showing over and over again that people are actually dying and having their health negatively affected from other conditions far more rapidly because of COVID. Because of the lockdowns meant that if you had an elective procedure or a preventative procedure that you were scheduled for, you were unable to get in. Why? Because we fearmongered about COVID and had lockdowns. So, a story that I told in my state, in Pennsylvania, in the center of the state, where we're rural, we had the exact same lockdown policies that Philadelphia and Pittsburgh had. As a result, my brother that was scheduled for brain surgery because he has severe epilepsy had to have that brain surgery put off. Why? Because they were worried that here in rural Pennsylvania, we would have an overflow of COVID patients, which meant that people with legitimate conditions like him had to just wait it out because we waited for this hypothetical thousands of COVID patients that never came. Instead, I think we have 2 deaths in Jefferson County, and we've had something like 50 cases. So this idea of, oh, well, we had the lockdowns to keep the hospital empty is garbage. It's absolute garbage. And what you've done is actual people that had heart conditions or had cancer conditions or epilepsy or Alzheimer's, all of those deaths are going through the roof. Right. But they don't care. All they want to do is virtue signal. It was all right for our side to go out. Black Lives Matter. It was okay for them to go out to hundreds of thousands and protest against Trump. Perfectly fine. But God forbid your brother get his epilepsy surgery.
And what took us by surprise, because we've been talking about this for a long time, this is something you've said before, like months and months and months and months ago, is that we didn't realize how many diabetics and how many cancer patients were actually more afraid of COVID than their own afflictions. So they didn't go to the doctor.
Right. I mean, there's tons of stuff like that. But you get,
we underestimated who doesn't go to get their cancer treatments on a regular schedule because they're more afraid of COVID. People who believed the hype. Is that not correct?
Right. Vaccines. Younger people that, infants and stuff to get vaccines, they expect that we're going to actually see an increase in a lot of the diseases that we vaccinate our young people for because so many young people skipped vaccines because they didn't want to go to the hospital over fear of COVID. Even though with younger people, COVID's less lethal than influenza.
Unquestionably. Todd, give us a 5-minute state of Pennsylvania report. What do you got?
So our neighboring state in Ohio is what I like to term as COVID crashing. They are closing in on 10,000 cases a day. Hospitals are not being overwhelmed. Mortality rates basically staying where it is. But there's another little wiggle in the numbers. Mm-hmm. Pennsylvania is over 51,000 tests a day. And at 5,000 to 5,500 cases a day. That's 10% of the cases of the tests coming back, right? Mm-hmm. You have to keep in mind, the Division I programs that are playing right now, college sports, mm-hmm. they're testing those kids regularly.
Gotcha.
The students are being tested regularly. A lot of jobs right now, if you're having any interstate travel, and that's even into the bordering states, you have to be regularly tested. on a 14-day rolling scale. So, of course, the numbers are going to go up by a matter of the number of tests. We've known this from the beginning. Yet, when we were at lower than this number on a daily rate of positive COVID tests, we shut the entire economy down. We're at 5,500 and climbing, and it's not even in the conversation today.
Right.
Our governor refuses to talk to the legislature and is having a weekend at Cuomo's to see how the rest of the states that are in the conglomerate, how they're going to respond. You know, this is the same group, as Rob mentioned, that sent COVID positives back in the nursing homes. They came up with that brilliant idea that's being investigated by the federal attorney general, Bill Barr. Many, many friends, many, many business owners have reached out to me, and they did so on Friday. Are you talking to the governor today? Is there going to be a lockdown? What should we anticipate? We're making a run to the store.
Tell the people what was
supplies.
Potentially going to happen on Friday.
Another lockdown. We were going back to red.
We're going back to red.
That was the rumor. So I spoke to the people that I deal with on a regular basis at the state level, at a very high level. And they said, no, that's not going to happen. There's not going to be a press event today. It's just not going to happen.
So we bit the bullet. Your thoughts on what happened with Elon Musk on Friday?
Now, Carlos, to your point, that doesn't say that we're not going there next week after the weekend of Cuomo's. We may well have some kind of restriction. Oh, that's right. Philadelphia is about to talk about additional restrictions. As Rob mentioned, schools are going back to virtual learning.
Right.
And you're going to see a very big push from the teachers union that all schools in Pennsylvania go virtual learning for the foreseeable future. Now, your follow-up question was what?
Your thoughts on what happened with Elon Musk's tests on Friday. Did you see the tweet that he posted?
So Elon Musk said that he was tested 4 times in one day, 2 positives, 2 negatives. And he said, something's amiss here. Well, as I go back to my question that I asked Dr. Levine months and months and months ago, do you know how many times you're messing with that virus in a test to get it to show a positive? How many times, how many cycles are you amplifying that test to get it to show positive? Right. Oh, I got another one for you.
Right.
It's from a college football game last night on the West Coast. Actually, take it back. It might have been the Wisconsin team up north game. And there was a kid on the Wisconsin team that tested positive 90 days ago. Cleared the virus, takes another test in the last couple of weeks. Test positive again. But their medical staff said, well, wait a minute. He's showing positive because he's already had the virus once.
And
he cleared the virus.
Antibodies, right.
Not that he has it right now, not that he's displaying symptoms right now, but he tested positive.
Mm-hmm.
So how many of the 5,500 plus that were announced yesterday are in that same category?
Right. What is the test? Actually, that's a great marker. What is on the dashboard, on the state COVID dashboard, is there a number for cases that tested that were false positives? And, these are things that we should know. What else you got, Todd?
Well, I was going to say real quick, even the New York Times, and we had Phil Kerpen that came on our 24-hour show that said the New York Times even admitted that 90% of the positives they were getting in New York were false because the cycles of the tests they were using were way too high. So they were picking up trace amounts of what would be COVID, when in reality, for it to be infectious and for it to be actually dangerous to you, to actually have the illness, it needed a much higher cycle to be able to, or a much higher concentration to be able to count. So these false positives, again, why is the positive rate anything? We could test people for the common cold. There'd be plenty of positives. Is that something to get worried about? No, the things that we're worried about are what are the consequences of the positive cases. Consequences would be too many people in the hospitals, too many people dying or having serious long-term effects. We're not seeing that. Like, actually, as these cases have gone up, whether it be through the treatments or because, thanks to Democratic governors, they killed off all of the people intentionally through their policy of sending people to nursing homes. But now we're seeing less people die. So the question of, just focusing on, well, look at how many cases there are. One, we know there are a lot of false positives. And second, the claim was never stop people from getting COVID. The claim was flatten the curve, right? Flatten the curve, which meant, yes, the same amount of people will still get the illness. It's just we don't want them all getting it at once. So if the hospitals aren't being, even the World Health Organization came out against lockdowns. They said the lockdowns are only necessary at 1 week's point increments, and that's if your hospital system is overwhelmed. So if that would happen in Pennsylvania, so be it. Todd, is our hospital system close to being overwhelmed?
No.
Right. So why are we going against science? Now, I used to be able to get kicked off. I think I still can. I could get kicked off YouTube or Twitter. I don't know about Twitter, but I could get a video pulled if I disagree with the World Health Organization. Yet our leaders are disagreeing with them.
And the gem from this week is the CDC saying that they put out tests back in March that they knew didn't work. That was the gem from this week. What else you got, Todd, at 1 p.m.?
Just the most recent updates in the Myrtle Beach case that the Williamsport Area School District just keeps getting exposed for contradiction.
Tell us the last thing that you exposed.
So the two most recent things is the principal's wife, Brandon Pardo's wife, Rand Pardo, through her South Williamsport Area School District email account, received the room list that the Williamsport Area School District, including her husband, has claimed for 2 years didn't exist. They had no record of.
Right. They said that the list didn't exist at all. But you came into information that led you to send a right to know request to South Williamsport and the principal's wife email account, and they came back and they did indeed come back and answer you with the room list.
Within 30 days. They asked for an extension to go look for it of 30 days and came back within the 30 days with the list.
Right.
And yet the Williamsport Area School District, with any number of people that received that same email, have their right to know officer saying no record exists.
Exactly how many people from the Williamsport Area School District received that email?
Several. I'm not going to get into specific numbers because there's a pending right to know request that's going back to the district, but several.
Right. So more than 3, certainly.
Yes.
And how many years did they tell you that there was no list?
2.
As a matter of fact, it's November. So it's actually 28 months.
Roughly. 2.5 years.
What's the second thing?
So earlier this week, and it was, I think, Friday, and not yesterday, Saturday. So Friday, we get word from the school district that they've unredacted other emails that they didn't previously provide till this year, that the punishment for the alleged perpetrator and alleged videographer was suspended from practice and play pending the outcome of the investigation. The day after, the George Lepley letter, which is dated May 31st, threatening the school district that if there was any punishment given, there'd be ramifications legally. Well, right. How do you hand down a punishment?
So the attorney for the perpetrator threatened the school district with consequences if they punished the perpetrator.
On a letter dated May 31st that on reason and belief, we believe was hand delivered to an in-person meeting on June 5th.
Quickly contrast that to the context of what happened in Mount Carmel this week.
The Mount Carmel football team has a hazing incident that I'll be getting into in the next couple of weeks. Also player on player. And Mount Carmel, the week that this was brought to the attention of local law enforcement, shut the football program down for the season.
Was there video evidence?
I'm not going to get into specifics, Carlos. The story is still being in development right now. However, there is documentary evidence that it is at minimum hazing, if not worse.
But the point is that they shut the entire program down.
Yeah, where football is king. 5 state titles, winningest program in the state of Pennsylvania. Top 5.
How many state
wins.
titles does the Williamsport Area School District have?
In baseball?
Yeah.
None to my knowledge.
Okay. And how many videos allegedly exist of attacks in Myrtle Beach?
At least 2 or 3.
And is the program still viable?
They plan to play in the spring.
Final comments on your end, Todd.
Brace yourselves. This week, you have a federal court case with the Trump campaign here in Williamsport. The eyes of the world are going to be on the federal courthouse. And as I told you before in this show, the judge this case is before, expect a punt.
Okay. Do we know exactly what the case is?
So it's the Middle District case. They wanted, the state wanted it moved to Harrisburg. This is the Bookvar guidance.
Pennsylvania
case.
wanted to move it there.
Yes. Yeah, and they got denied. So they're staying in Williamsport for the time being.
Okay.
This is the Bookvar guidance case where they allowed certain counties to do certain things with the guidance that came out
2 hours
on
before,
right?
2 hours on November 3rd, right? November 2nd.
This is the ballot curing case.
Right. Okay. Those are your final comments?
Just have a great week, everybody. Brace yourselves. There's a lot more stories coming out this week. And Thanksgiving is like 2 weeks away, man. Can you even believe it? So stay in your bubbles in Thanksgiving. Get ready for your bubbles on Thanksgiving. There's only 10. You can only have 10.
Final comments, Rob.
Yeah, so I want to just not talk about the fraud for a second and just talk about what led up to it. If you're someone who despises the way that our government's ran and you don't think that the average person has a voice, I don't care if you're independent, if you're non-political, if you're on the right, if you're on the left, if you're Republican, if you're a Democrat, you should be outraged at the union we see of the total control of information by a handful of corporations working in conjunction with the intel agents, working in conjunction with the establishment people in the Republican Party and with the Democratic Party. You should be outraged by it. I know you might not like Donald Trump, or maybe you really like him. It's irrelevant to what we see occurring. We will never get a government to the people, for the people, if this control of information is allowed to remain in these people's hands. As technology gets more advanced and we have things like deepfakes and other things coming out, they'll be able to convince people of anything that they want. You should have a healthy skepticism of this sort of authority. There are people on the left that have this skepticism. I brought this up in a debate I did the other night. You have Michael Tracy, Jimmy Dore, Aaron Mattei, Glenn Greenwald, Matt Tiabi. You know what I was told, Carlos? Yeah, those are the leftists that all have dents in their head. You see, because if you're a leftist that has a problem with the abuse of authority going after even someone you despise like Donald Trump, then you must have something mentally wrong with you. That's who these people are. There are people that we need to reach across the aisle for, whether you're on the left or the right. But let's not mince words. There are people like the ones you saw last night that think that you are an existential threat to them if you vote for Donald Trump or if you're Republican, and they will use any means necessary to take you out. We have to be prepared to deal with people like this using our legal system. Our legal system is currently corrupt, so we need to do everything we can to end this corruption that we see. You have to keep yourself safe. We'll see what happens. I hope that the courts fairly point out if there was fraud or not, and they enact decisively upon it. But even without the fraud, our system cannot sustain this way. Again, Brazil, they're managing to count all their dates in a day or two, all their votes. We can't do it here. We have to outsource to private corporations and things like that. It's a sad state of affairs. It really is. And we should all come together. I don't care if you're a socialist, if you're a capitalist. We can have those discussions later. We should come together and say the way that we're doing this is absurd. The way we're allowing the media and the tech companies and the intel agencies to all collaborate together to pick a winner is absurd. That's what we should be saying. But there are people out there on the left that said, but Orange Man bad. So I'll cheer for the FBI's coup against Donald Trump. I'll cheer for the intel agents to now be pundits on the same media companies that were supposed to hold truth to power and cover them critically. I'll cheer for that because Orange Man bad. That's why.
Mean tweets.
It's the same people that will tell you how morally superior they are while then coming onto your chat and calling you a fat A and wishing a heart attack upon you. It's the same people that will pretend that they care about civility, but then they want to make lists of Trump supporters. That's who these people are, right? Now, I'm not saying make a list of them. I'm still saying I'm willing to talk to those people. I am. But you just have to understand how incredibly powerful this propaganda is. Those people that I just told you about, they think they're fighting the establishment as they wear their Nike shirts and drink their Starbucks and agree with Bill Kristol and Liz Cheney. The same neocons they once pretended to hate are now their biggest allies. But that's them fighting the establishment. So just remember, when you hear their arrogance about the need to come together, they refused to come together for 4 years as they called you every name in the book, as they claimed that Russia, with no evidence whatsoever, colluded with Trump to steal an election. So Trump should exhaust all of his legal options. If it doesn't work out, then we need to start getting back in the culture war. And the way we do this is to show these people for who they truly are and to continue to show how corrupt these people in the establishment are. Make no mistake about it. As they get more towards their goals with people like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and things get worse for the average person, they'll blame Trump. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and whoever they would want after them and whoever they would want after them and whoever they'd want after them, they could have power for 40 years, and it would still be conservatives and Trump's fault when things got worse. Just like in the inner cities that are ran by the Democrats. It's the Republicans' fault. Republicans' fault that violence is so bad in inner city Chicago. It's Trump's fault. So the number one thing you could do is look after yourself and your family. It all starts there. You can sleep, the only thing that matters at the end of the day is, are you okay with who you see when you look in the mirror? I wasn't a hypocrite, so I'm okay with it. And hopefully you all could say the same as well.
Thanks. I think that on your last point, someplace I heard that the way that when you look in the mirror, the conversation you have to have is, you remember your 18-year-old self?
Mm-hmm.
Would your 18-year-old self look at your 50-year-old self right now, or in your case, Robert, your 29-year-old self?
36.
And right.
The balding shows it, yes.
And be proud of him. Would the 18-year-old self be proud of the 36-year-old self, or in my case, the 61-year-old self? So that's the question you have to ask in the mirror. But before we get to that, I have no problem with your John Goodman-like ass, okay, Rob? So it's all fine.
Me
but
neither.
personally, I want to let you both know that I've already canceled my Thanksgiving plans, and they're going to be turned into a RGB Memorial / BLM gathering family potluck scheduled for the 26th.
Awesome. Peaceful protest.
You're all invited.
Yeah.
You're all invited. Masks are optional. And I also want to make sure that you guys understand that if, God forbid, anything happens to me, my dying wish is that I don't want to vote Democrat after I die, okay? If you guys could just please make sure my executive knows that. Listen, we can control ourselves. That's the difference, right? Of what we're talking about today. We can control ourselves. We have a choice. We still have a choice. We can solve our own problems before trying to solve the world's problems. Obviously, we've talked about this before. Make sure that your garden is weeded and kept and trimmed before you start telling your neighbor what their garden is and isn't doing. And again, like I said today, in Rob's fantastic point, of I'm not the problem. It's the other people that are a problem. No, absolutely not. You must be the answer. The individual is the most powerful person in this country. They are the sovereign. not mobs, not political parties, not vile and poisonous institutions like the Department of Education and teachers unions and the media and CNN and MSNBC and obviously now Fox and Disney. You, the individual, is the sovereign. Rob is right. Rob's always right.
Not always.
Okay? He's almost as right as I am. The way that we win this, the way that we survive this, the way that we keep the republic is that we must win the information war. And you win the information war by being accurate. We'll leave you with the most concerning thing that happened this week on social media. Did you guys see the post of Tucker Carlson announcing on Facebook or on Twitter that he was leaving Fox and joining Newsmax? Well, that's fake news, because if you look at the Twitter address, it said @Tucker CRALSON, not CARLSON. So it was a different account with the same photo and a photoshopped blue check mark. The fake news and the hoaxes are all out there. It's up to us to control ourselves and make sure that everything that comes out of our mouth is accurate. We try to do that here on this show as much as we possibly can. Okay, because we're human too, you know, we're biased. We're center right. We're not completely center. We're not on the left. That's why we try to get people on the left to come to our show and give us perspective. Perspective. We're not buying everything. We just want to understand perspective so the average person understands what's at stake in other people's perspective, especially if politics isn't their entire life. So take care of yourself first and take care of your family and be accurate. That is our message for this week. And we hope to see you again next weekend. And we will see you later, guys.